risk of losing the investment. So I'm sure this is probably one of the biggest topics on your mind. It's probably one of the most complex because there's a lot of different factors in there. I'm a numbers guy. I spent a lot of time just looking at the numbers and trying to figure out whether or not it made sense for us and our household to make this investment. Ultimately, that's going to come down to a personal decision by you and your household as to whether or not it makes sense for you. But what I can do here is I can share with you some of my experiences and what lent to our decision making process. The very first thing that I'll cover pretty quickly is that you may be getting pitched with this idea that LuLaRoe will buy everything back, their buyback guarantee. Frankly, I disregarded that entire position. The reality is that yes, LuLaRoe will buy everything back, but they will only buy everything back. So what they're talking about is you would have to then ship them back everything that you've received in your initial investment or in your initial inventory. So to me, really, that's intended just for anybody who made the initial investment, received their inventory, and decided that they didn't want to have any part of it before they even got their toe wet. So I knew that if we were going to get into it, then we were going to get into it. And when we started receiving clothing, we would be selling something, and thus we wouldn't be able to send everything back from the initial order, and thus we really wouldn't be able to get our money back in that way. So yeah, it's a deal that's out there. I don't really think that it's applicable to us, so I disregarded it entirely. The next point, and really this is, I'm just sharing with you now, the biggest point that swayed me was when I realized that through your upline and through different online resources, networks of other consultants, it is nearly a 100% likelihood that we would be able to offload all of this inventory, certainly at a wholesale cost. It wouldn't happen overnight, wouldn't happen quickly, and we wouldn't be making a profit. But I'm confident that if Sarah decided to bail tomorrow, we would end up being able to find a handful of consultants who would be willing to take a lot of our inventory off of our hands at wholesale, which really, for me, minimized almost entirely the risk factor for the investment. Of course, there are other expenses involved, not just the clothing, the peripheral expenses, the lighting, the camera, the backdrops, the tripod, the hanger racks, the hangers. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? I'll tell you how I looked at all of those items. Frankly, I just figured we'd end up eating it. We budgeted about $1,500 for that, and I'll get into that in a minute. But that's all stuff that if we ended up dropping out, that would be our loss. Really, that would be our biggest area of loss. And you never know. I mean, if Sarah did end up getting out of LuLaRoe, maybe her next business venture would be photography, in which case the lighting and the stands and the tripods and the cameras and that kind of stuff are used. Maybe it becomes clothing accessories, in which case, hangers and racks and all that kind of stuff becomes used. So, honestly, all that peripheral investment stuff really didn't bother me as much because it was all stuff that I was comfortable either saying we're going to eat this as a loss or we'll pack it up and at some point we'll find another use for it. So that's my 2 cents on the risk of losing your investment as far as the money that you're putting into it. Some of the other things that I looked at, though, were really when I'm assessing an investment like this, I want to know not only the good, which you can find everywhere, but also the bad and the ugly. So I made a poignant effort to go out there and try and find all the negative feedback. Anybody who's ever had a bad experience with LuLaRoe, I wanted to hear about it. I wanted to know about it. And to be honest with you, there's not a lot out there. Considering the exponential growth that LuLaRoe has been going through, I really expected to see a whole lot more of that. And I'm sure, I don't even need to say it, but people who have a poor experience with the company, they're 10 times more likely to voice their opinion much louder than those who are having a positive experience with the company. So I expected to hear a lot more and see and find a lot more, but frankly, I just didn't find a lot out there. I did find some, and I'll tell you my personal assessment of the negative feedback that I ended up finding was that it was primarily coming from people who either just didn't want to put the work into the business. They kind of had the impression, or at least my impression from what I found of theirs, was that they made their investment, they got their clothes, and the clothes just didn't sell themselves. So that's got to be LuLaRoe's fault. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a business. You're going to end up having to work for it. The other side of it is people who got into it. The other side of the negative feedback were people who got into it and just really realized that they weren't comfortable selling. They just frankly weren't comfortable propositioning a sale, driving sales, upselling, and it just probably wasn't the wisest business investment for them to begin with. But I mean, they're still out there and they're still complaining about LuLaRoe. But frankly, that really didn't sway me because when I looked at what they were actually complaining about, it really seemed to be more, I don't want to say their own fault, but it probably wasn't the wisest investment for them to make in the first place. So that's my 2 cents on that one. I'll also say, with regards to the point I made just a minute ago with selling off all of this inventory to other consultants, we've come to meet a lot of people from LuLaRoe, and not only through the convention, but here locally. And I have yet to meet anybody, talk to anybody, or even talk to anybody who knows of anybody who has done that, or even heard of anybody doing that. The reality is we recognize that it's out there and it's a possibility, but I just don't know of anybody who's ever actually gotten into it, started it, and just decided that they wanted to cut bait and run and off all of their inventory to other consultants. So food for thought. It was a comfort zone thing for me that we could do it, but having now gotten into it and spoken with a lot more consultants and LuLaRoe people, and knowing that it really doesn't happen, frankly has been even more comforting. So on the topic of talking with other consultants and the reality that we have at least 10 other consultants in our little town here, the topic of oversaturation is one of the biggest out there. And it was initially a concern of mine as well. Wow, all I really know and see about this company everywhere is that they're experiencing exponential growth. And at what point are they oversaturating the market? And at what point are they handicapping their own consultants by surrounding them with too many other consultants? And I'm not going to get into that topic too much here. I mean, if you want, that could probably be its full other video. If you want to hear more about it, if you want me to get into that type of depth, just go ahead and comment on the video or PM us directly. But I will say that if you're the kind of person who's going to say my inability to achieve sales is because there's just too many other salespeople out there, if you're going to find yourself justifying your inability to succeed on the existence of competition, then this may not be the best investment for you. Certainly think twice about it, because honestly, I look at the fact that we've got 10 other consultants here, I know that Sarah does, as really more of a benefit than a handicap. We've got 10 other people around here that we can coordinate inventory with, that we can coordinate sales drives with, that we can commiserate with or strategize with and bounce ideas off of. you know, the reality is and one of the things that I've really had to come to learn is that the women's clothing industry is immense, and the amount of money that women spend on clothing just blows my mind. Um, but the fact that there are 10 or so other people in a small town who also sell LuLaRoe, and the reality that all 10 of them don't have probably but one or two of the same items that we have here doesn't bother me a bit. I look at Sarah's either success or hurdles as being her and my own either outcome or challenges that we have to face. So, we embrace that challenge. We look forward to it. If you're looking for a business that all you have to do is buy the clothing, sit on it, and put a sign on the front yard saying that you have the clothing and you're going to be an overnight success, this isn't it. This is a business. You are a sales consultant. Essentially, you're a fashion consulting business. So be prepared to run it like a business. So those are really the key points that I've got on the risk of investment. It's something that we chose to embrace, and to be honest with you, it's only been a few weeks, and we're loving the experience so far. It's been great for us, and I don't second guess it for a minute. So, if you have any other specific questions on the risk of the investment or any of the topics I just covered here, like I said, go ahead and either message me or leave a comment on the video. All right.